At 20,000 feet, the sky offers no comfort. The air is thin. The cold is constant. And there is nothing there designed to keep a man alive. Up at that altitude, falling is not part of the plan. Not without a parachute. Not without a chance. And yet on a winter day over occupied France, one man fell and lived. It raises a quiet question. What does survival mean in a place where survival is not expected? And what happens when war, with all its precision and planning, fails to deliver the outcome it was built to ensure? Before that moment, before the fall, there was still a sense that war could be controlled. Rules existed. Strategies were drawn. Outcomes were calculated. At least that is what those involved needed to believe. In the early years of the Second World War, the skies over, Europe became an entirely new kind of battlefield. There were no front lines in the air, no clear boundaries, just altitude distance and the constant presence of risk. Bombers crossed the continent in daylight. Their engines echoed across cities and countryside. For those below, that sound carried a simple message. Something was coming. For those inside the aircraft, it meant something else entirely. Young men, many barely out of adolescence, found themselves far from home, flying into heavily defended airspace. They were not explorers. They were part of a system trained, organized, and sent forward with a specific purpose. Among them was Alan Magee. Before the war, his life had followed a different pace. Like many others, it was shaped by routine, ordinary days, familiar faces, and a sense of continuity that felt dependable. The kind of life that does not announce how temporary it is. Training changed that. It introduced discipline, structure, and a new kind of awareness. Gradually, the familiar was replaced by something else. Procedure, responsibility, and the constant understanding that each mission carried real risk. He became part of a bomber crew operating within one of the most recognizable aircraft of the war, the B-17 Flying Fortress. The aircraft represented more than engineering. It was built around an idea that strength, altitude, and coordination could offer protection, that a formation of these bombers could fly deep into enemy territory, complete their mission, and return. It was a powerful belief. But belief, especially in war, is often tested. By early 1943, bombing missions had become routine in a way that felt almost structured. Flights were planned, targets assigned, formations organized. Yet behind that structure was uncertainty. Every mission carried the same unspoken reality. Not everyone would come back. On this particular day, the target was Street Nazaire, a key port on the French coast. Its facilities played an important role in the German war effort, especially in supporting submarine operations in the Atlantic. Reaching it meant flying into one of the most heavily defended areas in the region. Anti-aircraft guns were positioned along the coast. Fighter aircraft were ready to intercept. The approach was known to be dangerous, but it was necessary. So the bombers moved forward. In the air, everything depended on coordination. Crews followed their roles, closely maintaining formation and preparing for the moment they would reach the target. There was little room for distraction. Each task mattered. Then the defenses opened fire. Anti-aircraft bursts appeared around the formation. Dark clouds expanding suddenly in the sky. The aircraft were forced to push through it. The environment changed instantly. What had been controlled became unpredictable. The formation began to break under pressure. Magee's aircraft was hit. The damage came quickly and with serious consequences. Systems began to fail. Parts of the structure weakened. Inside the plane, the situation shifted from routine to urgent. There was no time for reflection. Only response. The aircraft built to endure was now struggling to hold together. In the middle of that unfolding damage, Magee was separated from the plane. It was not a jump. There was no decision involved. One moment he was inside the aircraft, part of the crew. The next he was no longer there. At that altitude, the conditions are unforgiving. The cold alone is enough to overwhelm the body. The speed of the fall leaves no time to orient. No time to react in any meaningful way. In extreme situations like this, the human body sometimes responds by shutting down. Consciousness fades. Awareness narrows. Magee lost consciousness. And he continued to fall. Below him, life continued as it had moments before. In the occupied town beneath, civilians moved through their daily routines. Trains passed through stations. Activity carried on, shaped by the presence of war but not stopped by it. No one was expecting what was about to happen. The fall ended in an unexpected place, a railway station. Instead of striking solid ground, Magee crashed through a glass roof. The structure gave way, absorbing part of the impact. It did not eliminate the force, but it changed it. That brief interruption made the difference. He landed inside the station, seriously injured but still alive. In a conflict defined by large-scale destruction and loss, moments like this stood out not because they were common, but because they were so unlikely. Magee's survival came at a cost. His injuries were severe and recovery would be long. Survival in this case did not mean a quick return to normal life. It meant enduring the consequences of what had happened. His experience reflected a broader reality. Across Europe, millions of people were living under constant pressure. Cities had been damaged. Families were separated. Daily life continued, but it was shaped by uncertainty and disruption. In the station where Magee landed, civilians and soldiers encountered something unusual. Not an active combatant, but a wounded individual who had fallen from the sky. In that moment, the lines between opposing sides became less defined. He was taken into custody by German forces and given medical attention. Despite the circumstances, he was treated as an injured airman. Even in wartime, there were moments when immediate human need took precedence over conflict. The war itself continued to evolve. Technology advanced rapidly, especially in aviation. Aircraft became more capable and defenses more effective. The scale of operations increased, as did their impact. But events like this highlighted something that no system could fully eliminate: uncertainty. No matter how carefully missions were planned or how advanced the equipment became, there were always factors that could not be controlled. Magee's fall was one of those moments. On a larger scale, the war reshaped the global landscape. Nations emerged, changed politically, economically, and socially. Industrial systems expanded. Infrastructure developed. The technologies used in conflict would later be adapted for civilian use. But those developments carried the memory of how they were created. Progress and destruction had been closely linked. In the years after the war, there was an effort to understand what had taken place, not just in terms of outcomes, but in terms of meaning. How could such advanced systems produce such widespread loss? What did progress look like in that context? Stories like Magee's became part of that reflection. Not because they explained everything, but because they did not. They introduced an element that did not fit neatly into strategy or design. Survival in his case could not be fully explained by preparation or planning. It involved timing, circumstance, and a series of events that aligned in an unexpected way. It serves as a reminder that even in highly structured environments, outcomes are not always predictable. There are always variables, conditions that cannot be anticipated or controlled. Magee survived, not because everything worked as intended, but because in that moment something altered the expected outcome. Over time, the world moved forward. The war ended. New challenges emerged. Technology continued to advance, often at a pace that earlier generations could not have imagined. But certain aspects remained unchanged. The sky at 20,000 feet is still the same. It offers no protection, no guarantee, and yet it holds the memory of moments like this, when the expected outcome did not occur, when a fall that should have ended in loss did not. A single structure, a brief interruption, a different result. It is a quiet detail in the larger history of the war, but one that invites reflection. Not on certainty, but on possibility. Because sometimes, even in the most controlled and carefully planned circumstances, the outcome can shift. And in that brief shift, everything can change.